Did you know that having very few friends at the age of 70 might actually be a sign that you possess things far more valuable than $1 million home? We grow up believing that the more friends we have, the happier our lives will be. But by the time we reach 70, that belief often reveals a different face, quiet, solitary, yet full of profound meaning. Many people at this age no longer go out partying or gathering with crowds. Outsiders are quick to label them as lonely. But if we listen more closely, we might discover that behind that silence is a kind of cleansing, a conscious, intentional choice made with awareness. Could it be that having fewer friends in old age is not a sign of lack, but rather a reflection of a life that has become full? A person who has lived through enough celebrations, enough heartbreaks, enough lessons to understand that holding on to too many relationships is no longer necessary. They start letting go, embracing peace. Most importantly, they begin to choose. In today's video, I will share with you a completely different perspective. Why having fewer friends at 70 might actually be a beautiful thing. What does it reveal about your wisdom, your experience, and your inner freedom? Is loneliness really something to fear, or is it just a disguise for a quiet yet deeply rich kind of wealth? Before we begin, drop a positive affirmation in the comments below like, "I am living a peaceful and meaningful life," and do not forget to subscribe. Hit the like button so you do not miss any content that helps you live healthier, happier, and with more quality in your golden years. So what is really behind the absence of friends at 70? Let us dig a little deeper. For a long time, society has planted in our minds a default belief: the more friends you have, the happier your life must be. That belief might hold true during the vibrant years of youth, when we crave validation, want to be surrounded by laughter, compliments, and the sense of belonging. But once we step into our 70s, when the noise slowly fades into quiet, does that belief still make sense? There is still a very biased perspective out there, that old people who live alone and have few visitors are to be pitied, abandoned, forgotten. Offhand comments like, "You live all by yourself? No one visits you anymore? Poor thing, getting old and no one checks in," create a silent but heavy social pressure. Many older adults feel compelled to appear busy, to show up regularly at social events, to be visited often, just to be seen as still valuable or still socially capable. When we are young, having lots of friends is seen as a form of social success. But in old age, that same thing becomes an imposed standard. Seniors who choose a quiet, inward life, who enjoy peace, are easily labeled as sad or isolated. People look only at the surface, how many visitors, how many phone calls a day, to judge someone's life, while rarely asking, are they happy? Are they content with a few deep and meaningful connections? Because of that, many elderly people find themselves caught between their real needs and society's expectations. They want a simple, burden-free life, but they are afraid of being seen as lonely, of being misunderstood as forgotten. There are relationships that no longer offer emotional value, but are still maintained out of fear. Fear of being seen as abandoned. This calls for a change in perspective. The number of relationships does not define the value of a life. A person does not need to have a crowd of friends to feel loved. One does not need to laugh loudly in a group to feel joy. And seniors, more than anyone, deserve to live in a way that feels fulfilling to them, not according to the molds that society tries to force on them. But if we set aside those pressures and prejudices, we will see that having fewer friends at 70 often stems from very natural, deeply human reasons. 70 is not a time to build more and more relationships like in youth. On the contrary, it is a phase when connections are naturally filtered, often quietly, often profoundly. There are many reasons why people at this age tend to have fewer friends, and none of them are as negative as many assume. First, it is simply the natural law of life. When you have lived through 70 springs, you have not only seen beautiful sunshine, but also countless quiet goodbyes without any warning. The friends you once sat with through the seasons of youth, those you laughed and cried with, held hands through life's ups and downs. Some of them are now gone forever, taken by illness, by age, by that one final sleep that never ends. For those still alive, distance often grows, not out of dislike, but simply because health declines, memory fades, legs are not as steady for visits, or perhaps they have moved away, to a nursing home, to live with faraway children, or just to a different neighborhood. Time has its own way of washing things away. No noise, no notice. Even the strongest bonds slowly thin out. Fewer visits, fewer conversations. Each year, your contact list shortens. Your phone rings less. Reunions become only memories. And what is special is that no one is letting go on purpose. Life just flows that way. The cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death spares no one, and those who remain must learn to accept it, to live with absence as an inevitable part of aging. So if you have fewer friends at 70, it does not mean you are unloved. Sometimes it simply means those who once loved you are no longer around to show it. Second, you begin to consciously choose your relationships. You no longer have the patience for meaningless small talk just to be polite. You realize that a quiet cup of tea can feel better than hours of chatting with someone you do not truly connect with. Gatherings done just to avoid surface loneliness start to feel unnecessary. You begin to see that someone's presence matters far less than the feeling they bring into your life. You do not need a mile-long list of friends to feel loved. Instead, just a few people who truly understand and care about you are enough to create a solid support network. They might not see you every day, but when you need them, they show up. They do not speak in grand words, but they bring peace just by being near. The older you get, the clearer it becomes. A good relationship is one where you do not have to pretend in order to be accepted. And because of that, having fewer friends is not a loss. It is a natural step in the journey of living true to yourself. You are not lonely. You are just prioritizing honesty and emotional safety in every connection. And that is a spiritual gift not everyone dares to choose. Third, your values deepen and shift. Youth is a non-stop journey of proving yourself, proving your ability, your place, your worth through others' eyes. Compliments, likes, attention. They once felt like certificates of success, but as you walk through nearly your entire life, you suddenly realize real value is not in how others see you, but in the peace within your own soul. At 70, silence is no longer scary. It becomes a familiar companion, a trusted old friend. A peaceful day does not need to be noisy or full of laughter. Just some soft sunlight in your room, a warm cup of tea, an old song, or a well-worn book is enough to make the day worthwhile. They do not need someone to text them every morning to feel loved. They do not measure their worth by how many parties they attend. They understand that superficial things come and go easily. What remains is the calm that comes from not having to please anyone and not needing to act strong to hide their vulnerability. To them, the quiet in relationships is not loneliness. It is freedom, inner freedom, and perhaps the ultimate destination that so many young people are still desperately trying to find. And finally, the lesson from experience. After stumbling enough times, people begin to slow down, not because they are weak, but because they have learned that not everyone who walks beside you is truly sincere, and not every smile comes from a good place. At 70, trust becomes a precious asset. It is not given away easily, and once lost, it is even harder to regain. Older people have opened their hearts, given without expecting anything in return, and been there for others, but they have also been disappointed, especially when they needed someone, and no one showed up. These experiences do not make them bitter. They simply make them wiser, more grounded in where they place their hearts. Now they no longer look for a crowd. They look for the right people. They value those who stood by them in hard times, those who may not be flashy, but are always genuine. Their list of friends may be short, but every name is a symbol of true affection. A simple message from those people can be enough to make them feel deeply loved. Yet behind that quietness lies a spiritual treasure that not everyone gets to experience. First, there is deep wisdom and insight. By 70, people have seen enough ups and downs to no longer be naive in their relationships. They have misplaced their trust, been hurt by people who seemed close. Flattering words, friendly looks, polite check-ins, those things no longer convince them. They know now that sweet words can lie, but actions tell the truth. To them, friendship is not measured by how often someone shows up, but by how sincere they are when it really counts. They observe more closely, feel more deeply, and have the intuition to know who truly cares and who is just around for appearance's sake. They do not choose friends out of loneliness, and they do not keep shallow connections just to avoid hurting someone's feelings. That is experience speaking, and it is one of the greatest gifts time has given them. Second, they enjoy deep inner freedom. At this age, their emotions are no longer easily shaken by others like in their youth. A missed call, a forgotten invitation, a get-together without their name, none of that disturbs them anymore. They have learned to let go of what does not belong to them, and they no longer depend on others to feel valuable. A 70-year-old does not need someone to stand beside them to validate their existence. They have lived enough to know their worth is not based on external approval, but in how they see themselves. They can spend an entire day alone and feel just fine because they have learned to live with themselves, a skill that not even all young people have. They know how to enjoy silence, a morning with tea, a soft song, a familiar book. It is enough to nourish the soul. They do not need noise, crowds, or empty small talk. At this age, they have found the best friend of their life, themselves. And that is a kind of freedom many people spend their whole lives searching for. Third, they carry a lifetime of memories and experiences. At this point, people no longer crave big gatherings just to feel like they have friends. They are no longer excited by rushed meetups or half-hearted conversations, because within them already lies a treasure trove of memories. The meaningful years gone by, the deep relationships they once had, the joys and sorrows that touch them to the core. They hold stories that need no telling, because just remembering them brings warmth to their hearts. Maybe it is the memory of a rainy afternoon from their first love, the laughter of childhood friends, or the sparkling eyes of their baby learning to say mom or dad. These things, though part of the past, still feel alive as if they happened yesterday, and they continue to nourish the soul every day. They no longer seek joy in the crowd. They understand that no amount of outside excitement can fill the emptiness inside if the heart is unsettled. So, they choose to live slowly, to live deeply, to live with what truly matters. For them, an afternoon spent sitting on the porch, watching sunlight hit the wall, can bring more peace than any loud party ever could. Fourth, they experience a profound sense of peace. At this age, the fewer complicated relationships you have, the more peaceful your life becomes. Having fewer friends not only saves time, but also frees the mind from invisible pressures. The pressure to please others, to maintain appearances, to smile, even when the heart does not want to. They no longer get pulled into meaningless arguments, nor do they care about who is gossiping, who is comparing, or who is secretly competing with them. They understand that everyone has limits to what they can bear, and the time they have left is too precious to waste on petty negativity. Fewer friends, but ones who truly understand and respect each other, are far better than a wide circle filled with suspicion and calculation. They walk away from toxic relationships, not because they are weak, but because they are strong enough to say, "I do not need this in my life anymore." That choice brings them a calm and peaceful existence. No pretending, no effort to impress, no struggle for attention. They live truthfully, and they live enough. It is a kind of ease that people dream of all their lives, but only those who have walked far enough truly get to experience. And finally, there is a great deal of self-respect. Older people who have been through life understand that trying to hold on to relationships that no longer hold meaning only leads to more exhaustion. They are no longer willing to force a smile, to be overly friendly, or to bend themselves just to be considered pleasant. At this age, they have nothing to prove, and they certainly do not need to win anyone over just to stay in their lives. They have been disappointed by expecting too much from the wrong people. They have once lowered themselves to keep what seemed like an important connection, only to later realize that relationships not built on sincerity always fade. Now, they no longer seek approval, no longer flatter to get invitations, and they do not fake friendliness just to avoid feeling left out. They choose to live honestly, with no show, no masks. If someone is genuine, they cherish them. If someone is shallow, they let them go, gently, with no anger or blame. Not because they are selfish, but because they are clear-eyed. It is a quiet, profound kind of maturity, where a person knows exactly what they need and what they deserve. And it is through that letting go that they find a spiritual freedom that many young people are still struggling to find. And from those seemingly simple things, we come to realize the true value of a quality friendship. When we are young, we often chase after expanding our social circle with the mindset that the more, the better. But as we grow older, especially in our twilight years, we begin to deeply understand that having fewer friends, but meaningful ones, is far more precious. A deep, sincere relationship that does not need to be flashy, but brings us peace of mind, is worth far more than dozens of shallow, surface-level conversations. The friends who remain after all those years are the ones you do not have to tiptoe around, the ones you do not need to keep up appearances for, the ones where you never need to keep score, because between you exists real trust and understanding. That is the foundation for emotional safety, free from illusions or unrealistic expectations. A quality friendship also means long-lasting companionship. They may not be present every day, but they show up at the right moments, when you are feeling low, when you are ill, or when you simply need someone to listen. They do not need to say much, they just need to be there. And sometimes, that silent presence is the best medicine for the soul. Beyond that, having fewer relationships also gives older adults more space to connect with themselves. They understand their own emotions. They know what brings them joy and what causes them unease. That is something many younger people, still caught up in chasing the world, have yet to learn. And maybe, this deep self-connection is the root of a peaceful life, one without loneliness, without confusion. However, having few friends does not mean being isolated. Choosing a quiet life with few friends in old age is perfectly normal and even admirable, but it is easy for that choice to slip into isolation, especially if we are not mindful of the fine line between living alone and being left alone. At 70, when physical health declines and emotional sensitivity increases, the feeling of being forgotten or disconnected from society can take a real toll on mental well-being. It can lead to depression, hopelessness, or even memory loss. That is why, even with fewer friends, older adults still need to maintain healthy connections with the world around them. Start with simple and practical things. Join community groups for seniors. It could be a Tai Chi class, a book club, a gardening group, or even online learning for older adults. These are not just places to gain knowledge, but also spaces to connect with others who share similar interests. If going out is physically difficult, then technology can be a golden bridge. Learning to use a smartphone, making video calls through Zoom or FaceTime, sending messages through apps. These small skills can make a huge difference in staying in touch with grandkids, old friends, or even making new online connections. Writing can also be a powerful way to beat loneliness. Keeping a journal, recording your life stories, sharing lessons learned. It is not only a way to preserve memories, but also a way to keep the mind sharp and the spirit positive. And beyond all that, Try to maintain at least 1 or 2 truly close relationships, whether that is an old friend, a kind neighbor, or a family member, anyone who brings you a sense of safety and love. So you see, when we look more deeply into the picture of old age with few friends, we uncover the depth behind that choice and the growth it reflects. The absence of noisy, superficial relationships is not a lack. It is a sign of a life that has matured, filled with experience, understanding, and the courage to live truthfully. A 70-year-old with few friends is not someone who does not know how to love or connect. It simply means they have chosen wisely and kept only what truly matters. They live with inner strength, with wisdom that runs deep, and with a soul that is at peace. They do not need a crowd to feel worthy. They do not need praise to know they are living right. If you are at that age or approaching it, be proud if your friends are few but genuine. Cherish the quiet within and never believe you are alone as long as you are connected with yourself. If you resonated with today's message, feel free to leave a comment sharing your thoughts or write an affirmation like, "I am proud to live true to my values." And do not forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a heartfelt video like this. We will meet again soon with more meaningful stories about life in our golden years, where the simplest things are truly the most beautiful.